Hey, 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 and welcome to Financial Confidence on WYTV7. We're helping you to manifest your millions. I'm your host, Lynn Demmons. Yes, that's Demmons. No demons here, y'all. Demmons. We thank you for tuning in with us for this episode, guys, where we hope that you are more than fine. That's right, you're more than fine. Somebody asks you how you doing, don't say fine anymore. Why? Because fine means I'm freaked out, I'm in debt, I'm not making enough money, and I'm emotionally stressed out. All right. So we're gonna
finances in a rut, need a way out? Lynn Demmons is here to help. She's your personal financial rebound coach. Being a wife, mother, and educator, she understands the importance of controlling your finances and building generational wealth. She is here to help you find money you didn't know you had and live life on your terms. Sounds too good to be true? Well, it is true, and it's definitely a good thing. Lynn Demmons of Demmons Enterprise offers one-on-one coaching, group coaching, and radio podcast entitled Financial Confidence God's Way on WYTV7 Christian Broadcasters Network. Lynn Demmons of
fine. That's right. The next time somebody asks you how you doing, don't just say fine. Why? Because fine means I'm freaked out, I'm in debt, I'm not making enough money, and I'm emotionally stressed out. So we don't want you to be just fine today, guys. We're going to help you to move to your next and manifest your millions. We have an exciting show for you today. So go get your pen and your paper because you don't want to miss a moment. But before we get to our guest today, remind you of our guiding principle for this show, which is Matthew 6:33. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. We also implore that you pray over your finances so you can do the things that you're called to do. That's to build generational wealth and leave an inheritance for your children's children. No, it doesn't mean you can't have fun in life, but we're definitely looking at opportunities. How do we build for generations to come? So if you will, guys, just take a moment and bow with me. Lord, help us to value things in this world that are really valuable. That's our relationship with you, our lives, and our families. Help make us responsible stewards of your financial resources, and let us trust your holy word. Eternal glory in thy son Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, guys, I'm ready to introduce our co-host, if you will, in the show today, Miss Jermaine Green. She is coming to us live. Jermaine, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Awesome. I am so glad that you are here with us today so that you can share your story. But before we get into that, can you just tell the audience just a little bit about yourself?
So, I am a wife, a mom. I am a Christian. I've been saved since 12 years old. Awesome. I'm a business owner. I spent about 10 years in public accounting before switching over to the nonprofit space. And now that I'm in the nonprofit space, I run an accounting firm that specifically works with nonprofit organizations. We help them to pretty much organize or streamline their financial process, and we manage their accounting operations for them.
Awesome. So that is very important work, working with those nonprofits.
Yes.
So if there are any nonprofit listeners listening in today, hopefully you will get some valuable information out today, and definitely contact Miss Jermaine Green. So Jermaine, so we can get to know, let's get to the real meat and potatoes. Let's really get to know Miss Green. So what I want to ask you today is about your first job and your first paycheck. So what was that first job?
Okay, I think back to, I believe it was 12th grade, and I worked at David's Bridal, actually. I was usually responsible for, as brides or soon-to-be brides made their appointments to come in and try on dresses, I was usually responsible for pulling the dresses, setting up the dressing room, things of that nature. My first paycheck, what did I do with it? I was in 12th grade, so I'm pretty sure I probably did a little bit of spending. At that time,
Right.
right, you're young and kind of probably just happy to have a couple dollars in my pockets. I probably took myself on a mini shopping spree because I'm sure I wasn't paid that much. But yeah, that was my first job, David's Bridal.
Awesome, awesome. So, you're the first David's Bridal, because when I think of David's Bridal back in the day when I was a kid, that was like the go-to place for your prom dress or for your, so, that was Cinderella land to be able to go into David's Bridal and try on all those dresses.
Yes, we'd have girls coming in for sweet 16s. Like, it definitely wasn't just for weddings.
Right. Awesome. Well, that's a great first job. So let's move on just a little bit and think about the work that you currently do. So how did you get started in the accounting space? Was it something you've always wanted to do, or was it something that you just happened upon? Because accounting is dealing with numbers, and most people are not like, yeah, that's what I want to do.
I'll be honest. When I tell people this story, they're like, really? I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do when it was time to go to college. Like most probably 18, 19-year-olds, I think it's really difficult to kind of say, like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life at 18. But because I just wasn't sure, I was like, okay, what subject am I really good at? I was good in math. I equated that to maybe that would be a good accounting degree. And so I just honestly selected accounting. My mom was a finance major. And so I was like, okay, I'll do something a little bit different. So I went the accounting route, and here I am. I spent 4 years. I got a degree in accounting, and then I went back and got my master's in forensic accounting. I was really I still am, like the CSIs, Law and Order type of shows. And so I went back to forensic accounting, where I did a lot of study on kind of like white collar crimes type of stuff. And those frauds that happen, like in banking industries and things like that. And so that's how I ended up in the accounting field. And then I ended up graduating with a job offer, and it kind of just took off from there. And so I spent some time in public accounting. Then I went internal and worked at a couple of different banks. And once I had my daughter back in 2018, it was kind of like a shift. Like I had my sights on climbing the corporate ladder until I had a kid. And I was like, maybe that's not what I want to do. I wanted to be home more. I wanted to have more time freedom. And so at that point, I made the decision to ride out my maternity leave. And then I was like, okay, I'm not going to return. And then a couple of months later, an opportunity just kind of like fell in my lap for a nonprofit here in New York who had been abruptly losing their CFO. They were like, we need someone full time, but until then, can you like sit in? And I was like, okay, because at that point I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. And so I tried it, and I was like, I think this is going to be it for me. And, I really enjoyed the fact that I was working for an organization where I felt like I was doing good. They were, of course, doing good in the community. Felt very different from corporate, where I felt like I had an actual hand in how this organization was able to uplift the community. And from there, I did a lot more research on the industry as a whole. And that's when I kind of spent more time. I worked there, and I worked at a couple of other nonprofits in that interim role of controller/CFO. And that was the catalyst for me starting my own firm.
Wow. So let me backtrack. Let's go back a little bit, because earlier you said your mom was the finance person. So what impact did your mom being in the finance field have on your decision ultimately, you think?
We were I think times have changed. So like, whereas now you hear a lot of like, do what you love, my mom, probably being a finance major, was very big on pick a career that can support the life you want. And so I went to a performing arts high school, actually. And so, I sang in the church choir and all those things. So it was like, I teeter-totted it back and forth as to whether I was going to go to school for music or whether I was going to, pick kind of like that traditional career. And I'll be honest, it came down to what was going to pay me. And when I realized that the music wasn't going to be as steady as I wanted it to be, I was like, okay, I didn't want to do the exact same thing she did, which is why I was like, okay, maybe I won't go the finance route, but I'll go accounting, which is closely, related. And so,
Right,
I
right.
think that her having gone through school as well, so I wasn't first generation, she was. And so I think having her going through that and then her take on just like picking a career and things like that, I feel like I grew up with that. I really want to make sure I got a career that can put a couple dollars in my pocket. And so that
Right,
really
right.
that played honestly the big part in me saying, okay, I'm not going to go to school for music. I'm going to choose something else that's a little bit more what we quote unquote say stable now, right? Because technically nothing's really stable. But back then it was like I
Right.
felt more guaranteed in that field versus like music.
Awesome, awesome. So I know we won't put you on the spot and ask you to sing today, but if you feel inclined to do so. But on a serious note, one of the things I wanted to reiterate that you actually hit on was the fact that there's no such thing as a guarantee now, right? When we think about those jobs, because that's what we were all told, go to school, go to college and decide what it is you want to do and get that good job. But there's no such thing as that good job or that guaranteed paycheck anymore. So now you've moved to the place where you have your own business. So what have you seen has been the true difference for you, whether it's financially, your time, things of that nature, in owning your own business versus being on that corporate ladder?
So I will say, I think it's pros and cons, but that's with anything, right? And so, but the huge part is I now have 2 children, and with both, I've pretty much been home the entire time with them, right? And so, whereas like, most moms don't have that luxury. It's like you get that 3-month maternity leave, and then you're trying to figure out childcare and, things of that nature. And so that was, I would say right now, that's been the biggest blessing of it. But the other part is being able to kind of grab my career by the reins and drive it where I want it to go. And so while I was making very good money in corporate, I felt very disconnected to what I was doing. And at the point that I was ready to leave the job, I could do what I was doing in my sleep. In my business, I feel very challenged. I don't know who said this. I read it somewhere, but they were saying like, when you become an entrepreneur, it's like the most self-development that you will ever go through. And I'm like,
Ever.
like, I think like both personally and professionally, like I have grown so much. I've learned so much about myself. And then it's also been nice to provide opportunities to others, because I'm also of the space where I did not come into this to be a solopreneur forever. I wanted to get to a point where I could mentor other young Black and Brown accountants that wanted to be in this space. And so being able to provide internships to these young, these young people that want to be in the field, and being able to provide a place of work for other people, like that's been a blessing as well. And so, I'd say all in all, it's something that I wouldn't take back. I think you do work a little bit harder for your own.
Absolutely.
But oddly enough, it's like, I don't mind because I know it's mine. And kind of like how you mentioned in your intro, like I want to leave something for my children's children, right? And so I understand that I knew that I couldn't do that in corporate, and not to say that corporate wouldn't allow me to make some money moves. I probably would have still had to couple that with something else. I feel like as running my own business, income is not limited. I don't have a ceiling that I'm going to hit. And so, I think that it provides a great example to my children as well. And so when they get older, the narrative will be a little bit different versus like, don't go to school for that because that won't make you any money. You know what I mean? Like I'll be able to give them a different story that they can tell. And so I'm looking forward to that.
Awesome. I love that. I love that you are not only thinking about yourself, your family, but you're also branching out to others. You mentioned the interns, up and comings, right, in your field. So that is an amazing point that you share. And I love the mindset. So in your story, I can see the shift, right? And that's the whole point that we're trying to get across to everyone, the shift in our mindset and our thinking around the way that we think about money, because we are not always taught everything we need to know about money, about finances, about whatever. And that could be for anything in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
You're not taught everything you need to know, right? Go ahead.
Right. No, I was going to say, and I think my ability to be very, because funny enough, while my mom is a finance major, I'm much more of a stickler. I think I grew up just much more of a stickler as it related to money. And it's odd because like hearing you say, you know, we're not taught financial literacy, but it was one of those things where I feel like my willingness to be so on top of my money almost came from like a scarcity mindset of thinking like, I never want to run out, right? I don't ever want to get to this point where I don't know. And so I got so caught up in like, make sure you spend, you know, this amount of money on this, make sure you follow your budget to the T. And I will say though, I've been able to expand my thinking a little bit more around that. And while I still am very much an advocate for budgeting and spending wisely, I also got out of that scarcity thinking though, of thinking that there is no more.
Absolutely. I love that, because what we think about is what we create in our lives. So if we're thinking of scarcity, guess what comes to us? More scarcity. So I love that, thinking through that process, because, right, guys, our beliefs, you heard this before on the show, your beliefs lead your thoughts lead to your actions. Those actions basically determine what your results are going to be. So what are you believing about yourself, about your finances, about your life as you move forward? So get into some of those beliefs. Jermaine, will you share with us what are like the top 3 misconceptions that people have who typically work with you, and how do you help them to dispel some of those misconceptions?
So honestly, the very first one is that because you are a nonprofit, that means you can't make any profit. And I think
hello.
Right. And I think that this huge misconception is why some remain small and grassroots, and why you have some as big as the YMCA, AARP, who are worth billions of dollars, right? And
right.
So nonprofit is a tax status. It does not mean that you can't make any profit. It just means that whatever profit you do make, it has to go back into the organization. It can't pay the owners, because technically there is no owner. It serves a public interest. And so that would be the first one. The second one I say is that there's a one-track mind I see on how to garner funds. So there's a lot of, there'll be a lot of blog posts and tweets and things like that, kind of talking a lot about like grant writing. And I see like a lot of founders in the beginning almost like stressed and wondering how they're going to get these grants. But I'm like, there's so many different ways to garner funds outside of grants, but you also have fundraisings, you have donors, you have sponsorships. And not to mention, it's 2021, but in 2020, when, especially if you are a minority-led organization, the fact that our injustices were heightened, you know, like in the news and things like that, there are so many more organizations, corporations, the government that are willing to give money to our organizations, right? To the organizations that support our communities. And so I stress the importance of broadening your horizon, like thinking bigger, and stop thinking about these little 5 and 10K grants, and start thinking about these government contracts who are given $100,000 plus to one organization, you know? And funny enough, I don't know that I would have known that had I not first worked internally before kind of doing my own thing. And so the organization that I worked here for, it was like a $10 million plus organization, but the majority of their funds came from government contracting. And so the other piece of that was that these contracts were usually multi-year. So they didn't have to worry every year, how are we going to make, you know, how are we going to budget for these things? You know, are we going to have enough money? Because they also weren't looking at these kind of one-time hit or miss grants. They were looking for those larger fundings, and then also the funding that came multiple years. And then I think the last one would be the myth of overhead and how you staff your organization. So there is this like I don't know, this conversation has been going on so long, but funders will typically give organizations money to run their programs, but a lot of times there's restrictions placed on how they can spend the money for the people that support the organization, so the staffing. And what I find is that for some of these organizations, they don't realize that you have to think outside the box sometimes. And so while you may not be looking for a full-time worker, you know, think about, can you hire somebody part-time? Can you do volunteers? Can you outsource a portion? times have changed. We are in a digital first society. So I think we have to start thinking of creative ways to spend the money that we do give instead of harping on the fact that we don't have enough money.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So one of the definite misconceptions I do want to come back to, because we've had some others that have asked about the government contracting side. So as a nonprofit organization, and in the spirit of transparency, let me just say this. One of my partners and I, we also have a nonprofit organization, and we bring in sponsors and things of that nature. And one of our events, we were able to get the PGA to sponsor us, the Professional Golf Association. So, but what I wanted to go back to was the government contracting side, because often that's an area that's left out, right? That's an area that a lot of people tend to steer away from because it's known for the amount of work that goes into it. So how do you help position nonprofits to be able to, quote unquote, go after those government contracts?
So the first thing is that we always have to consider capacity, because a lot of times I think we could get caught up in the shiny object syndrome and thinking like, oh, there's this big contract. And that's why I say too, that there has to be a partnership between the leadership as well as the financial piece. So whoever is managing or leading your fiscal department, because I've seen it where the executives will go out and get these huge contracts. And then we're like, oh my God, like we don't have the capacity to manage this, because those contracts also come with their own financial reporting requirements. So outside of the fact that we then have to keep up with making sure the organization, of course, is in good standing, we have to also make sure that we're managing these contracts and separately, right? So capacity, that is the first thing that we usually will sit through and walk through and determine if we're going after a certain contract, what is this going to require of the organization, and can we actually fulfill this? And if so, then we will go through the requirements and see what's needed. Usually you have to prove like what kind of financial health standing that you're in. And sometimes you do have to also kind of pitch in a sense about how you'll be able to deliver on these services, which, because we usually always consider capacity first, we usually don't have much issue with doing. I usually see the issue honestly coming in when we have to speak to the numbers and how we can prove that this is funding that we need, and how we believe that as an organization, we can then impact the community using those dollars. And so that's why I also say, it's important to make sure that you have the right financial partner, because that's a big piece of why people will say yay or nay to being able to give you money. They want to trust that you know what you're doing with those funds.
Absolutely, absolutely, guys. So one of the key points you definitely need to walk away from that conversation is having the right financial partner on your team before you move forward, before you even consider whether or not you'll be able to do or deliver on that government contract in your nonprofit or any other organization, whether you're for-profit or nonprofit for that matter. Capacity is definitely another huge piece of the pie. So Jeremy, we truly appreciate you for joining in with us and sharing your story. This has been really fun, and the time
I had a great time.
I wanted to ask you, are there any last minute thoughts that you would like to share with the listening audience before we end?
So we kind of touched on it a little bit, but I think as we kind of are entering into what most are calling like the new normal, I think it's important to just think about what your financial story is, what it is that you tell yourself, but then also what the reality of that is, but then to make sure that you don't get caught up in it. I just finished reading a book called The Magic of Thinking Big. And I think that so many of us live in our heads, and we end up in kind of manifesting those things, right? And so we get locked into this box or this scarcity thinking. But I challenge you as you enter this new year to really start telling yourself some better stories, really start tapping into that abundance, right? And really start, stop putting a limit on the limitless God, right? And so there's so many things that he can do for us. And like it says, we can do all things, right? Through him who strengthens us. And so I just implore you to really hold on to that and to take that with you as we, head into this new year.
Absolutely. I love it, guys. Words to live by. Yes. We have a limitless God, so why are we putting limits on him? Tap into that abundance is what she said, guys. So we want to thank you so much for joining us, Jermaine. How can our listeners find you?
Yes, so I am on Instagram and Facebook at The Visionary Accountant. You can follow me there, message me there, send me questions, and I'm very responsive.
Awesome, guys. That's at The Visionary Accountant on Facebook and Instagram. Well, Jermaine, we thank you so much for sharing with us, stopping by. We hope to see you in the future. Don't forget, we'll be looking for that song. I didn't forget.
Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. Well, guys, we thank you so much for tuning in for this episode of Financial Confidence, where we're helping you to manifest your millions, helping you to make your money, keep your money, and grow your money so you can do those things that you're called to do. That's to build generational wealth and leave an inheritance for your children's children. We also implore, guys, that you reach out to us. We want to hear your money success stories. We want to know how you're doing. Go ahead and give us a call at 470-236-8282 for tuning in for this episode. We'll be here next week, same time, same station. Until then, you guys stay safe.
October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And if you're a woman who's been impacted by this illness, you welcome the focus and the opportunity to learn more. I'm Carol Laurie. I am a naturopath, acupuncturist, and homeopath. And the focus of my clinical practice in my online community is to provide women, such as yourself, with the natural and integrative tools so you can get through treatment with reduced side effects and then move on to recover your health and know that you are doing everything possible to prevent your current recurrence. I've developed an online group coaching program, Empowered Against Recurrence. And during the month of October, I'm offering this at a reduced fee because I want all of you to have these natural and integrative tools to make them part of your life. So in the middle of the night, when there's that little voice that shows up and says, what if it comes back? You know that you're doing everything possible, taking the medical oncology with the natural and integrative science-backed tools to reduce your risk of recurrence. You can learn all about my upcoming program by going to www.empoweredagainstrecurrence.com. I hope to see you at one of my free classes offered throughout the month of October. This is Carol Laurie signing off for now. Hope you all have a wonderful day, and there'll be more later. Take care, everyone.
Finances in a rut? Need a way out? Lynn Demmons is here to help. She's your personal financial rebound coach. Being a wife, mother, and educator, she understands the importance of controlling your finances and building generational wealth. She is here to help you find money you didn't know you had and live life on your terms. Sounds too good to be true? Well, it is true, and it's definitely a good thing. Lynn Demmons of Demmons Enterprise offers one-on-one coaching, group coaching, and radio podcast entitled Financial Confidence God's Way on WYTV7 Christian Broadcasters Network. Lynn Demmons